Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week, studying the Psalms verse by verse. That's what we do here on Daily Dose Radio. I'm so glad that includes you. So glad that you are joining me today, and hopefully you've been here for a while. If not, welcome if you're brand new to Daily Dose Radio, and if you're brand new to the Bible Bistro, come on in here and check it out. The Bible Bistro's got a lot to offer. It's a whole catalog of sermons, Bible studies, studies here in the Psalms with Daily Dose Radio, the shorts that I produce for the catechisms, all of those. You can find that right here on Daily Dose Radio. Right here in the Bible Bistro. And I hope you'll check it all out and become a subscriber. Click the link to subscribe, and I'll be glad for you to join me. Just every day, 5 days a week. We don't do Daily Dose Radio on Saturday and Sunday, just Monday through Friday. So come on in and let's open our Bibles up. And today, verses 7 and 8. And I think I said this yesterday, that verse 7 begins the theophany section, what I call the theophany of prayer. So David has prayed. He began that in verse 3. He said, I'm going to call on the Lord, and He's going to save me. And then verses 4, 5, and the very first part of 6, he tells us why. He's compassed about with the sorrows of death, the sorrows of hell. He's in distress. There's a flood of wicked men who have come against him. All of these things have caused what he describes as distress there in verse 6. Because he says, in my distress, I called upon the Lord. So he's made his prayer. And after praying, there in verse 6, it says, my prayer came before him. He confidently just tells us, just kind of matter of fact, I prayed and my prayer came before him. Entered into his temple, entered into his ears. So, David confidently tells us that. And then in verse 7, what we're going to read today begins what I call the theophany of prayer, which is God's response to David's cry. So here we go. You ready? Today, just 7 and 8. Verse 7, then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. There went up smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. Okay, so that's 7 and 8. So here's God's response to the prayer. David prays, in my distress I called him, he heard me, and now here's what happens. God is moved, and it says the earth shook. And who's shaking the earth? Well, the Lord's shaking the earth. The earth shook. The hills were moved, shaken, because he was angry. Who's he angry with? He's angry with the people that have done this to his servant. Fire came out of his mouth and devoured. The coals were kindled by it, and so forth. Okay, so I think I said yesterday that this also reminds us of Christ on the cross. Because if you'll recall, when Christ was on the cross, in verse 50 of Matthew chapter 27, Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost, and behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain, from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. So that's Matthew 27, 50 and 51, and there's more. The graves were open and so forth. And the saints, they were raised from the dead, went into the city and showed themselves. And when the centurion says there in verse 54, when the centurion and those that were with him saw the earthquake and those things that were done. So the earthquake is mentioned twice here. Now, in David's prayer, when the Lord responds to the prayer, it says that the earth shook and quaked. So there's an earthquake that happens when the saints pray. The earth shook and trembled, the foundations were moved. But it also reminds us of what happened when Christ cried out on the cross. God was moved. Here's the theophany of prayer. God is moved on behalf of his servant. Don't think for a moment that he is not concerned. He will shake the earth. He will move the hills. He will break the rocks. Fire will devour. Coals will be kindled, right? I mean, this is the response of the Heavenly Father towards the prayer of his saints. It's the response of the Heavenly Father towards the prayer of his Son who died on the cross. All right. Now join me tomorrow, and we're going to look at verses 9 and 10 here on Daily Dose Radio.